Thank you for the nice introduction. My name is Christoph. I'm by profession an entrepreneur and CEO. I worked for the last 10 years with my company Blackboat, always focused on the question, how can we work together in a better way? How do we improve collaboration? But by heart, I'm a podcaster and filmmaker, so I feel more like a creative. And with that, I started a podcast 4 years ago, producing a podcast series of over 250 interviews and over close to now, I think, 400 YouTube videos with like 10 million views regarding the question, what makes us stronger in terms of work? So how can we improve the way we work in order to like go more energized out of a week and say, this is something I really, really want to do. So everything I share with you today in order to get closer to this question, how can we shape our remote reality? Everything I share with you today is based on this experience from all these interviews of psychologists, professors, creatives, photographers, students, entrepreneurs, CEOs, you name it. There are so many different people we talked about that it's impossible to share all of that. But I want to take you on a little journey, and let's start with one of the stories that struck me the most lately. So pretty much the last flight before the COVID crisis hit and we all went home and actually started this working from home experiment. The last flight was to Ann Arbor that I did together with my team. And why did we do that? We wanted to interview a man who is close to 90 years old by now, and who is the inventor of the term new work. He came up with the term in the late 80s. His name is Frithjof Bergmann. He sits in a wheelchair by now because he's pretty old, very clear in mind, but getting weaker and older. And we wanted to take the time to talk to him, to understand deeper and more precisely what his core idea of new work was about. And when we visited him after a day, we realized that a lot of the things he shared with us are related to a special moment, the first time when he came to a location and actually had these first ideas. So let me take you on that journey. 40 years ago, he was a professor at the University of Michigan, and he was asked by the management of the Body Fisher plant that was a car body manufacturing company owned by GM. The management actually had a fight between management, the unions and the employees about working hours and so on, because they had to let go a lot of people, thousands of people a day. And just keep in mind that in the US you don't have this tool of Kurzarbeit as we know it in Germany that can help you through a crisis. So this was literally for people life and death, because they didn't have food if he couldn't deliver that. So Frithjof came there as a philosophy professor, clearly something different than you would imagine. And he entered the stairs of that building and started the negotiation. And when we took him last year into his wheelchair, into a special car, and drove from Ann Arbor like 1.5 hours to Flint, where this Body Fisher plant is, you could realize that with every mile of that journey, he was kind of more serious and at the same time more excited to be back at this place that meant so much to him, where he came up with the first ideas. And we expected him to show us around that building. But what happened after a while, that he took us on a journey throughout Flint, showing churches and libraries and more churches. And we were like, what is happening? Is he like old and kind of dizzy already? Or like, what, is he out of his mind? We weren't sure. Until we realized that he wanted to show us why they had to change locations in order to do these negotiations. Very, very simple thing. People wouldn't speak up within the office. People wouldn't speak up within their actual workplace where they would work every single day. They felt afraid. They didn't feel secure in order to do that. So he chose churches and libraries other places for them to actually get started in the dialogue and communicate. Why is this story so important? What I want to share with you is, and that's what I want to talk about. If we put people seriously in the center of attention of all this discussion around remote reality and how we want to work, if we put people seriously in the center of attention, not for the sake of marketing, but seriously, we will end up with a way more productive and efficient work environment, and at the same time, we won't jeopardize a healthy and sustainable work environment where people feel seen and actually happy at work. That's what I want to share with you. And here are the 3 things that we want to dive into before we can start the discussion. So number 1, let's do a little exercise for you guys at home. Take a piece of paper and a pen. Actually, I shouldn't show you, but I'm known as Mr. Cloud in digital, but when I prepare a keynote, this is how it looks like. Just a quick side note. So take it home, a piece of paper and a pen, and let's do a small exercise. What is collaboration? What is collaboration? Some of you might say, no, when we bring together people, when a team has a vision. But if you drill it down to the one thing you need for good collaboration, it would be communication. So communication is at the core, and it's important to understand that everything we communicate with is just a tool, a digital tool or a physical tool, like the churches were a tool in that case to open up for conversation. And the exercise goes the following, and I put it here for you as an animation. You draw a huge plus on your piece of paper. And on the left side, you paint a little envelope, and on the other side, a little speaking bubble. And the left side you call asynchronous. And the right side with a little bubble you call synchronous. And on the top you write fast, and on the bottom slow. So what this is our matrix for communication. And this matrix is so simple, we share that with every single new employee on the first day. It's super important for us. It's the philosophy behind it. And on these axes, you have different communication tools. On the asynchronous side, you have stuff like the email, you have maybe short messages, maybe you have shared documents already. And on the synchronous side, video conferencing, of course, making phone calls, of course, something very synchronous. And on the very, very far end, the office and physical meeting. You can list all the other tools you want here that you have on this axis. And also rank it in terms of, is this a fast communication tool or a slow communication tool? The important thing to keep in mind is that certain things in our brain move faster when we process it and certain slower. So on the asynchronous side, we are up to 4 times faster in reading than we are in writing. So we're much faster in reading a text than actually writing and concepting a text. And on the other side, it always depends on who is speaking, but technically we are fast in listening. But if you also want to include understanding in terms of listening, we are on average 2 times faster in speaking than we are in listening. Why is this so important, and what can we draw from that? We can draw from this simple matrix several things. We have a bunch of tools out there, but we usually get it wrong how we use the tools. I'll give you one simple example. We tend to not prepare meetings well because the writing takes so damn long. And we don't have the time, or we are too lazy, however you want to call it. Of course, not you guys, I'm just share the experience. Then we talk much faster in the meeting as it would be sufficient for everyone to follow, and nobody really understands what we want because it's so fast and people are not prepared. And then some of the poor guys new to the company has to write the notes in order to store them far away on some kind of team drive. So this is why no meeting works. And this is what we try to fix with simple tools like a 6-pager meeting, from Amazon. There's a YouTube video we made about it. Or another one, why are conversations taking place via email when we discuss certain project fuck-ups or whatever? Why do they escalate via email? Very simple rule that people miss on that matrix. The rule is the more emotional the topic, the more synchronous the communication. So whenever you have a very emotional topic, you need to go on the synchronous side, which COVID took away from us. The office was an actual synchronous communication tool. Now, the most synchronous for many people is a video conference, which is a poor synchronous tool because we need to focus on so many things at the same time. So I would suggest a much better communication tool for synchronous emotional stuff on the distance is the phone, because we learned how to use it over the last 30 years. However, I just wanted to show you all these tools on that matrix are just tools for communication. So we have to see them as a tool. This is why it's so important to not over-digitize, but understand to use the tool in the right way. No matter how you turn, like all these tools are just tools for communication. Even a simple desk where we work on has been an invention to make work better in the old days. So it was a tool. So if we understand these things as tools, we perceive them in a different way. And this, of course, relates to digital tools as I said, to also physical work tools. That's the number one thing. Which brings me to number two. We shape our tools and thereafter our tools shape us. We underestimate the importance of our everyday work behavior regarding how we shape a tool, which then backfires to us. This quote is originally from Winston Churchill and it's called "We shape our buildings and thereafter our buildings shape us," but it also relates to every tool. And I want to give you two examples of great innovations that have been poor implementations and thus turn out into a very bad way in how to not use a tool. The first example is something physical that maybe some people of you know, the cubicle. You might have been asked, how did we end up in these cubicle deserts that people are well familiar with? So the original invention of the cubicle, well, let's go to the step before, comes from a guy called Robert Probst. Robert Probst was someone back in the 60s who was researching on the question of how do we store information in the brain? How do we actually work and change throughout the day? How important is it to change between sitting somewhere, let's say you have conversation on a small desk, then change location to stand in order to have a conversation and talking or doing some creative work and go back. This concept was called the action office. It was so innovative that many science fiction movies have used the desks that were specially designed for that. And the point is, this was not just nice design of furniture. It was an actual research process that changed the whole way we design today office furniture. But there was one tiny detail and actually a manual that people had to use in order to learn how to use that action office. The one detail was they had small walls around it, so it would provide you a little bit of privacy. They were not too high so that you could look above it, but they were designed as well in 120-degree angles. So very open still for people to join a conversation. When managers saw that, they were, oh, that's fantastic. Let's just make it 90-degree angles and a bit higher, and we can stack 4 times the amount of people in the room. Which then destroyed the whole idea of that action-based office idea, which came from Bürolandschaft and a very open, hierarchy-free way of communication as we look into today. I mean, I talk about the 60s. So in the way we misuse this tool, we shaped a new way of collaboration. And this originally action-based work, which is by far more productive, healthier, more innovative, we know from research, turned out to become a cubicle way of working, which is destroying well-being at the workplace, destroying productivity, because it's usually too loud. They even had guidance of how you would create the sound in the room. So it killed productivity and made us feel worse. So this is why it's so important of how to use a tool, in what way, and then make sure it reshapes us. The second example, you might know, I'm not sure, you might know. So let me take you on that journey. Remember the early days of the email. If you cannot remember, like myself, I mean, I'm born 82 and the email, the video I will show you now is from 89 or early 90s, so I was like 7 or 8 years old. But the video is from the early days of email. It's from Steve Jobs. And I played that video already so many times, and I promised myself I want to at least 1 million plays, so today is a good time. The email was originally a great tool for collaboration. How did we end up in this mess of an inbox, sometimes CCing people and taking them again out and then throwing someone new in, and I don't know, working in our inbox all day long? We have people calling us saying, "Oh, Christoph, we want to implement a new tool like Office 365. Due to COVID, we now need to communicate in a different way. Or we want to get rid of the email." I said, like, why? Yeah, because it's making us slow. But the original idea of the email was a great idea. It's just been used in the wrong way. Listen closely to this interview where Steve Jobs tries to explain to a journalist who's asking what the email is and how he uses it to leverage it.
I've seen the revolution here with my own eyes, and it's actually larger than the first two. Let me give you some examples. If we want to, if we're going to be doing a special project, let's say with a company, and let's say the company's called what's your
WGBH.
WGBH. We're going to be doing a special project with WGBH, and what we'll do is we'll create a special mailbox, WGBH, and we'll put 20 people on it that are going to be helping on this project. Now these 20 people will be from all over our company, from marketing, from sales, from engineering, some from manufacturing, maybe some from our Boston office so they can be close by. And if one sends a message to this mailbox, they'll all get it like that, instantly. And if one sends a reply, they'll copy the whole mailbox on it so the rest of the team members get to read the intellectual content going back and forth. And everyone in this mailbox will probably get around 30 mail messages a day. And they'll spend about 20 minutes, 30 minutes reading these and answering these per day. And it'll be like a beehive. Now, this project's very important for our company, and I want to make sure it's getting off right. So I'll put my own name on this mailbox, and I'll see these 30 mail messages fly by, all of the disagreements and the arguments and the thoughts and the decisions. And I can just let it fly by and read it. I can do some background coaching with a few people if I think they're a little off track. I can get right on the network and kibitz if I'd like. And after a month or so, when I know that it's going well, I can take my name off. And so not only is this a way to organize, violating all management and geographic boundaries, it's also a way to manage, where one can see, again, the thoughts and disagreements and decisions of a company fly by a manager in a way that they never could before. And we have seen it reduce the number of meetings we have at least by 50%. We've seen it get far more managers and individual contributors involved in decisions than they ever were before, and we think the quality of the decisions is a lot higher. And we've seen a window for management to look into the process of this organism we call our company in a way that has never before been possible.
So, as you might have seen it, he explained to him it's like a beehive where people come together, and he's talking about how it speeds up communication, but also like bringing together collaboration in a very transparent way. If you wouldn't know it, he talks about Microsoft Teams or Slack or a group communication tool where people come together and collaborate on. But you need a manager like him who understands that this is the essential of collaboration. Of course, that does not replace the workspace and this coming together, but it shows that you have to be able to understand the power of a tool and to use it in the right way and invest in training people and the skills that actually leverage communication tools. So this is why I think these are two examples of great innovations but poor implementations of a way how to use a tool or not to use a tool. Number 3, why is today a good time to get started? Well, my Zen master Hinak always says, in Zen you have the philosophy that there is only one day of the year that you can actually change stuff. Obviously, today. But this is not the point. I talk about why is COVID and this whole working from home thing a big chance. And my thought and take on this is that there are a certain amount of people who actually can work from home. Like you and I, we can work from home. And this is a big privilege that not everyone has. But I believe that this privilege comes with a responsibility at the same time, that we have to now use this as an opportunity to shape the way we work from home and how we use the digital tools and actually learn something from it, because we're so focused on this kind of work before everyone is then vaccinated and goes back to the office. So for the last 15 months we worked like this, and there were still people saying, oh, this is just a time going by. Of course this will happen, but seriously, 15 months into the game. This is not just something that you need to bridge. You can learn in 15 months to be brilliant and excellent in remote work and remote setup and digital tools. So here's my next exercise for you. Take again a piece of paper and a pen, and I give you now 2 minutes of time that you brainstorm a list of things that you have learned and good working hacks for the remote setup. I give you some examples, stuff that I learned and that we also know from studies. We have psychologists working for us who also look into all the studies that have been done, and also all the projects. We always look at these things. So stuff that I learned, for example, number 1, turn off your own image in video conferences, because people tend to look onto their own image all the time and it distracts. Number 2, use a proper camera. And you don't need a cinema camera like we have here, but a proper DSLR camera, because every kind of webcam distracts the face and it looks a bit not human, not too human. But a DSLR camera gives you a very natural look and it helps people to feel closer to you. If you even want to get still closer, another thing I would brainstorm on the list is use proper sound. And I'm not talking about headphones, I'm talking about proper podcast sound. We maybe show you here a picture how our setup looks like, that you can imagine, and how it feels different from a FaceTime camera and a built-in sound to a proper camera and a actual podcast sound. It's not too much of an investment. Another idea, I mentioned that earlier. If you have a very intimate conversation one-on-one, don't do it in a video conference. The video conference is the new formal, not the new normal. It's the new formal. So we feel very distant to people in video conferences because it feels, we feel tied to the desk. We cannot stand up, we cannot move. If you have an emotional conversation on the distance, take your phone and take a walk and then be on the phone. I made several videos about that, why the phone is still the best intimate tool over the distant, but let's see. Take your list it down, and keep in mind, sense always makes sense, nonsense will always stay nonsense. Brainstorm with people in mind. And no, the artificial background is not a good feature in any tool online. If you keep people in mind, you want to show part of your personality, and the room behind you is part of your personality. Yes, clean it up, make it look nice, even if it's a small space. But this is part of being human. So, brainstorm the best learnings. 2 minutes, go. So thank you for trusting the process and making your list. Take this list, even if it's physical, share it with your coworkers or clients or people who work with you in the remote setup to take away the best learnings from the last 15 months. So some small ideas you had already from my list, but maybe you share some in the chat here as well. And this is why I want to close with going back to the moment that I shared with you when Friedrich Bergmann, the inventor of the term New Work, brought us to these different places, and I realized that seriously putting people at the center of attention changes the game. If we do that, this helps us to shape a remote reality that we really, really want to work in. And if we do that with people in mind, I promise you, we will become more productive, and at the same time, it will be a more sustainable work environment. And you can be sure the profits will follow, but it feels much better. Thank you so much.